think, Mr. Zuma, the part that I didn't include in the observation I was making, about which I said you might not have much to say, was that as I understand Mr. Duduzana's evidence, including what he said in his statement, was also that at that meeting which he says you attended, which you say you didn't attend, if I recall correctly, he also says that when he said that the document that Mr. Rajesh Gupta, Tony Gupta, wanted him to sign, when he said that in effect that's a matter that should go to the head of department, Mr. Rajesh Gupta suggested to him that he should get rid of his head of department, and a call was made, and then Mr. Richard, what's his name again? Mr. Richard Seleke. Yeah, or Seleke. Mr. Richard Seleke was brought in, and in effect he said, you know.
So you brought into the meeting?
This is the person, yeah, at the meeting.
Okay.
This is the person you should have as your head of department. So I mentioned that simply as part of that observation, that you have a situation where on both occasions the venue is the Gupta residence. On both occasions Mr. Rajesh Gupta is in the house. On both occasions, he, at least on the version of, and not necessarily his because we don't know his version, on the version of a person visiting the house, the person visiting the house is being asked to do certain things and is being offered money for that. And on both occasions, it looks like there is contemplation that somebody may have to leave a certain position and somebody else must take a position. But I'm just completing the picture. I think I understand what you have said.
Yes, that's definitely the narrative that's out there.
Yes.
And I'm being, like I said, I'm being placed at the crime scene most times.
Yes.
But whilst we're still on that, if I can just refer us back to point 55.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just the paragraph that deals with the Jagersfontein mine. Look, I'm not sure. You know, a lot is said. A lot of accusations have been laid on my table. Just a point of curiosity. I mean, with all due respect, Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zuma. I did ask that the aircon be put on, but maybe not too high. I think it is interfering. I don't know whether if you raise your voice, that's going to make a difference. Okay. Just try and raise your voice.
I'll do that, Chair. Thank you. It's just a point of curiosity, and I say it with all due respect. There are a lot of accusations that have been labeled and placed on me, and I'm not sure what the investigative processes have been, but I'd just like to ask, you've heard what I've had to say about my non-attendance in this meeting and my denial of this meeting. But when it comes to procedural points, I've been accused of receiving monies from the said mine by Mr. Duduzane. Has the commission...
I'm sorry, I missed that. You have been accused of?
Of receiving money from a mining project in Jagersfontein. Yes, I just wanted to ask, did the commission follow any due process? Did they look into it? Did they investigate it? What is the status on that?
You mean what Mr. Duduzane says?
Yes, just as a point of getting to the bottom of it. The reason I'm asking is...
Yes, well, As I understand it, he is not saying that you gave money to anybody, Mr. Duwana.
If I may just elaborate, Chair. No, the reason I'm asking is there are a lot of accusations that have been thrown around.
Yes, yes.
True or false.
Yes.
That's for the commission
Yes.
to decide. So this specific point, whether the commission decides to believe my version or Mr. Dukwana's version or whoever else,
Yes.
due process from an investigative perspective by the
Yes.
commission, have they actually looked into, activities in Jagersfontein? Are there actually mines that exist there? Are there any linkages that are linking this specific? Because this is a very, very serious allegation.
Yeah, well, look, part of trying to establish what the truth is exactly hearing both sides. So what is happening here is part of trying to understand what the truth is. Up to today, certainly I didn't know whether your version is that you admit that you were present at that meeting or not. So now I know that your version is that you were not at that meeting. So this is not the end of the matter. There'll be more witnesses who will be called. And the investigators do what they can. But the people implicated also, they are expected to come forward and say, I know that the commission has been told this and that about me. In this case, I take it that you were finished with Mr. Duwana's affidavit. So they are expected, that if they don't agree with what has been said about them, they are expected to come forward to the commission to say, I want the record to be put straight. Here is my own statement. Here is my affidavit. I deny this. I was not at that meeting. And indeed, if you have been given somebody's statements who says something about you or implicates you in anything, you would have been given that together with a notice from the commission that advises you of your rights. And part of some of those rights are that you can apply to the commission to give evidence yourself and refute what is being said about you or against you, and so on and so on. You can apply for leave to cross-examine. Some people don't apply for leave to cross-examine, but they send an affidavit saying, this is my version, Yes. So one, this is part of the commission trying to establish the truth, and you have now told us what your side of the story is in regard to that. And that's not the end. The commission would look at things, but you are not expected to sit back and do nothing if it's something that you feel strongly about. Indeed, if you do nothing about it, in circumstances where you are aware that somebody has given evidence or has given the commission a statement that implicates you, if you do nothing about it, you might be expected not to complain if the commission at a certain stage takes it that you had no version to put forward. You had no problem with what was being said about you. You understand that?
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mkwena. You may proceed.
Chair, I will try to move as quick as possible in order to short-circuit the remaining issues which I wish to converse with Mr. Zuma. Mr. Zuma, I was just about to move to deal with the evidence of Mr. Sundaram.
Maybe I should say, Mr. Mkwena, I haven't put any time limit in regard to questions relating to the other witnesses, simply because on my recollection, nobody has applied to cross-examine and so on for leave to cross-examine or rather, he has not applied for leave to cross-examine them, unlike with regard to Mr. Jonas.
Yes.
But obviously, that doesn't mean you have all the time. No, I will be keeping an eye on how much time you spend on each. So I just thought maybe I should just explain that. So let's do what we can to ensure that the issues are, justice is done to the issues, but at the same time, we don't necessarily take too long. Okay. I'm not expecting you to take too long, but I wanted to explain that why I haven't said anything about timeframes with regard to the other witnesses.
Yes, Chair.
So you can proceed where I think maybe we have taken too long. I will mention on any particular witness.
Yes. Mr. Sundaram used to work for Infinity, and at the later stage, Mr. Duduzane, he was the editor of ANN7. Do you know him?
Yes, I do know. Thank you.
He testified before this commission and related to the chair the events which took place in 4 meetings, which he refers to in his statement. And he says that 3 of those meetings were held at the presidential residence in Pretoria. And one of them, I think the last one, the 4th meeting, was held at ANN7's offices in, I think it's in Sandton.
In Midrand.
In Midrand, yeah. Now, did you attend all of those meetings or any, or some of those meetings?
I only attended one of those.
One of those.
Yes. That was in Midrand.
And the one that you attended, is it the one, where was it held?
In Midrand at the ANN7 studios.
Yes. Now, we have now established, and it's common cause, that you are a shareholder in Mabengela, am I correct?
That's correct.
And in turn, Mabengela held shares in Infinity Media Networks, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
And would I also be correct that Mabengela did conduct business with government?
Yeah, yes, they did. That's correct.
Did, yes.
Well, no, ANN7 did, not Mabengela.
Yes.
Yes, so the TV station did, not my company directly.
If I put you the other, if I say that Media Networks, Infinity Media Networks did conduct business with government?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, the idea of the TV station, would I be correct that the person who was much more involved, I mean, if I compare you and your father, it was your father who was much more involved in the TV station than you?
I don't know about that, sir.
You don't know about that? Okay. Now, in the meeting that you attended, was your father also present, the president?
This was a studio visit, so it was a walk around the studio.
So he was present?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Can I refer you to bundle C? We are now going to deal with bundle C only. You can ignore the other bundles. If I may refer you to page 36. With particular reference to paragraph 9. Just want to establish whether were you aware of these presentations, or at what point were you involved with the TV station or your company conducting business with government through, any of your entities? Now, in paragraph 9, Mr. Sundaram says that I had earlier been told by Mr. Abdul Gupta to prepare a detailed presentation about all aspects of the TV project for the president. 3 copies of this report were printed and bound by Aslam Kamal, an employee of New Age, and close confidant of the Gupta brothers. Did you come to know about this presentation?
No, I do not know about this.
You're not part of
presentation.
it?
No, no, it's not.
Now, if you move on to paragraph 12 of the same page, Mr. Sundaram said that after I arrived in South Africa, I got to know that the then President Jacob Zuma's son, Mr. Duduzane Zuma, was a 30% shareholder in Infinity Media. Is that correct?
It was no secret, sir. That's correct.
Sorry?
It was no secret. That is correct, sir.
Correct, yes. And if you move on also to page 37, simply to verify certain issues with particular reference to paragraph 18, which simply identifies different role players. Mr. Sundaram says that the first meeting with Mr. Jacob Zuma was attended by Mr. A.J. Gupta, Mr. Atul Gupta, Mr. Nazim Hawa, Mr. Mukhasin Williams, Mr. Ashu Chalwa, and Mr. Arum Akhawal, and me. I know that you said you did not attend this first meeting, but maybe the last meeting. When there was this studio visit, were this individual also present? To the best of your recollection.
To the best of my recollection, I think the majority would have been present.
Okay. Now, did you come to know what were their role in the TV station?
The role of which
The
specific
individual
persons?
that you say, I mean, those that are identified on paragraph 18.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that, do you know what each role was played by these individuals? Do you know?
Yes, yes, I responded, yes.
Can you tell us? Can you share with us? I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. AJ is a co-shareholder.
Yes.
That's Mr. AJ Gupta, sorry. Mr. Atul Gupta was chairman of the group.
If you can, slowly.
Okay, Mr. AJ Gupta is a shareholder.
Yes.
Mr. Atul Gupta is chairman of the group. And Mr. Nazim Hawa was group CEO, if I recall. Mr. Mukhasin Williams was the group editor. Mr. Arun Agrawal was the co-shareholder as well from India.
I think I've jumped one name.
And then, Mr. Ashu Chawla. He was, I think, directed one of our IT companies. Yeah.
Would I be also correct that you were co-owners with Mr. Chawla in Mabengela?
That's correct.
Yes. You were also co-directors with Mr. Ashu Chawla in Ogbay?
That's correct.
And would I be correct that Mr. Ashu Chawla was the CEO of the Sahara Computers, the Gupta-owned entity?
Yes, if I recollect at this point, he possibly was. I'll have to
Yes.
check that, yeah.
And would I also be correct that you were a director in Sahara Holdings?
That sounds correct, sir. I'll have to check that at that point, but that sounds correct.
To sum it up also, would I be correct that you had close business relationship with Mr. Chawla?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, can I refer you to page 39? Paragraph 19.4, Mr. Sundaram says that Ashu was the CEO of the Gupta-owned Sahara Computers. He had lived in South Africa for many years and was the Gupta's point man for any coordination with the president and the South African government. He was particularly close to President's son, Duduzane. Would that be accurate?
No, that's not accurate.
You are not close with him?
No, not at all.
Well, is the part that you say is not accurate, the last sentence that says he was particularly close to you? Or is
It's
everything in that paragraph?
Yeah, that's both points. So I was particularly responding to
Yes.
the last part where my relationship with him.
Yes, that's
where
what
said it
you
yes.
are responding to.
Yes, I'm responding to that, and I'd like
Yes.
to also respond to the point where it said he had lived in South Africa for many years
Yes.
and was a Gupta's point man
Yes.
for any coordination with the president and the South African government. I'm not aware of that,
Okay,
so I'm
Not aware
refuting
of it.
that as well.
okay.
That's fair. And if I may refer you to page 56.
Maybe let me just, with regard to that last one, you know, it says he was particularly close to you. If we take out particularly and say he was close to you, is that fine? Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
Still very cold now. Still cold now.
So he was not close to
He
you?
was not close to me now.
Okay, all right.
You only had business relationship with him?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if I may refer you to page 56. Paragraph 25.17. And he says that I later asked Nazim.
I'm sorry, it's another page.
Yes, it's 56, Chair.
Page 6?
56.
5-6, okay. Thank you. Yes.
25.17. I later asked Nazim why President Zuma insisted on lecturing us on editorial and personal matters. Don't you know? Hasn't Lexmi G told you already? He has a big say in this venture. His son Duduzane holds 30% in the company. His involvement is very critical to the first year of our operations. If we are able to get government advertisement, we will be able to break even in the first year, he told me. If this were true, it would explain a lot, and it felt as though everything was falling into place. Can you confirm that you did hold 30% of the company?
I can confirm that. That number may have changed, but I confirm it's around that number, yes.
Yes. And then did the entity get any business from government?
It did.
And then we can move now to paragraph 56, page 56, Chair.
What page?
The very same page.
Yes.
Let's go to paragraph 25.18. The news channel I was heading would be a pro-ANC, pro-Zuma channel that was promoted and run by not only people close to the president, to President Zuma, but by President Zuma himself. If Nazim had his facts straight and Zuma held the shares through his son, he would be projected positively in the news bulletins. In this scenario, I could see how he would use his position as president to ensure government advertising for the station. The important part which I think is relevant is that it also seemed, if this was true, that there was a clear conflict of interest as his son had a stake in not just Gupta-owned newspaper, but also the proposed television news channel. And I'm affording you this opportunity to comment on the contents of that paragraph.
Is there anything specific you'd like to know?
Which of the portions of that paragraph do you dispute and which ones are accurate?
Look, I think there's a lot of creative writing in this paragraph. The simple fact is government advertising, well, for us to be in line for government advertising, should never be an issue. The conflict, myself being the son of the president at that time, my father being in office, I think that's an unfair point to make by Mr. Sundaram or anyone else. The fact of the matter is it was a TV station, it was a new TV channel, it was a startup, and just like any other channel, I implore government to support any startups. So when it comes to government ad spend, revenue, just like any other outlets that exist out there, you name them, they're getting government support via advertising revenue. So I completely refute this whole paragraph.
Now, let's dissect, what you have just said to the chair in the light of what Mr. Sundaram have said. Firstly, if my memory serves me well, your father, the president, and Mr. Zuma did not dispute that he played an instrumental role in the establishment of the TV station when he appeared. Do you recall his testimony?
If that's what you're saying, I'll take your word for it.
And then that's the first point. The second point is that you own shares or you have interest in the TV channel itself, directly or indirectly. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes. The TV channel was getting business from government. You have just simply confirmed that. That's correct.
That's correct, sir.
Now, wouldn't that be any obvious conflict from the analysis of those facts?
Which facts? The facts
Which
that
I've
you just
just put
said?
to you, yes.
No, I don't think so.
No conflict at all.
Sorry, sir?
You say there's no conflict at all.
I don't think so. No.
Yes. Now, if we can move to page 56. I want to move on from page 56 to page 59, Chair. Paragraph 28.8. And I will read to you also paragraph 28.10 and 28.13 simply to fast track this, the line of question. 28.8, it says that Atul has organized a chip reader and a 14-inch broadcast quality monitor to be sent to Ashu earlier in the day. He was to bring this for the meetings. We were ushered into the same waiting room where we had been before. Soon, Duduzane Zuma walked in and greeted us before proceeding to hug the Gupta brothers. We had a surprise for you today. That's in quote. We had a surprise for you today, Dudu. We will show you the bulletin we have been producing, A.J. Gupta said with an animated movement of his hands. Good, so we should move to the next room. It has a large TV. He's starting moving out, and all of us followed him. Do you recall this event?
Just to put it into context,
Yes.
so it's not taken out of context. I'll answer your question. So if we go back to 28.6, which
Yes.
is page 58, and I'll just read the first sentence. It says, the plan was to take a chip reader to President Zuma's Pretoria house and connect it to a monitor for him to see the bulletins. So when we come to paragraph 28.8, I'm being placed in this meeting, which I've clearly told you that I wasn't part of. You're asking me to comment on an event that I was not, a scenario that I was not part of. I'm not sure how you expect me to do it, sir.
I'm simply putting to you what Mr. Sundaram has actually told the chair and to give you a fair opportunity to react to it. So your answer is simply that you're not part of that meeting.
That's correct.
Yes. Now, let's move on to page 62. Paragraph 28.18, and to afford you a chance and opportunity to respond to that. At this point, AJ asked me to go back to the office while Atul, Nazim, and Duduzane met him for discussions about the newspaper and commercial issues. I was told the next day by Nazim and Atul that they had secured 20 million rands worth of business the previous evening. By this time, I had decided to resign as editor at ANN7 and go back to India after the launch. It was happening without the extensive training I had suggested. It was happening without test runs with all systems and equipment in place. But what really pushed me to resign was the violation of editorial integrity and dubious commercial dealings that I had seen with my own eyes. Would also be this one of the occasions where people are simply placing you in the crime scene, as you have suggested with the other witnesses. You are not part of this meeting as well.
Just give me 1 second, let me just go back. This will be part of the same meeting, correct?
Yes, and
No.
you are not part of it. You are
No.
simply placed on the crime scene as well.
That's correct, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, let's turn to page 63. Before we go to page 63, while you're still on page 62, so that you are able to familiarize yourself with the context of what I'm about to put to you. This is now the fourth meeting, which happened at Midrand, the offices of ANN7. On the 19th of August 2013, were you part of this meeting? Mr. Zuma, were
Yes,
you
sir.
part of this meeting?
Just give me 2 seconds, please.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, this is the meeting that I was part of.
Yes. And in paragraph 30, Mr. Sundaram said, apart from the usual attendees, the meeting was also attended by Mr. Lexmi Gul and Mr. Duduzane Zuma. President Zuma toured the studios, newsroom, and technical areas at the ANN7 office and also met the staff during the visit. My last meeting with President Zuma happened just 48 hours before ANN7 launch. I was told that the president would make a quick trip to the studios to take a look for himself, and he was expected to stay on to see the rolling of the news bulletin. I was part of the team that would show him around. This was critical. This was a critical time as I was virtually camping in the office, sleeping for a few hours in the temporary rest area created for a few members of the core team on the first floor of the New Age offices. I was in the morning editorial meeting where I got a call from Aslam to come and receive the president. He is expected anytime now. Lexmi and Atul G want to see him immediately. Aslam said outside, I found Nazim, Laxmi, and Atul were already there. With them was Duduzane Zuma. I greeted them and waited with them for the presidential convoy to arrive. Do you recall these events?
Very clearly, sir.
So you're part and parcel of this
Yes.
entire meeting, yes?
That's correct, sir.
If I may refer you to page 65. Paragraph 30.12, it's right at the bottom. He stood at the PCR for another 15 minutes and then moved towards the door. Laksim Atul, Nazim Duduzane, and I saw him off. I take it that him was the president, the then president. He said he was happy before he left. Atul assured him that the station would be run as per his guidance and wishes. Do you recall this happening?
I recall the event, seeing him off. That is correct. That did happen.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the rest you don't recall?
No, the rest, I was not part of that.
All right. Now, let me conclude on this evidence of Mr. Sundaram and simply wrap up, what appears to be his testimony, at least in as far as it relates to you, Mr. Duduzane Zuma.
Yes, sir.
We know, and you can take it from me, that when Mr. Zuma testified, he did talk about the importance of the TV station and his role before the chair. And we know that you were the shareholder in Mapengela Investment. Mapengela conducted business with government, and Mapengela Investment held the shares in Infinity Media Networks. Would I also be correct that Infinity operated the channel A and N7?
Yes, that was the vehicle.
Yes. Now, the channel AN7 benefited through advertisement from government. You confirm that?
Like any other channel around, yes, that's good.
Yes. Mapengela was partly owned by Tegeta.
I'll have to check that. No, I'm not.
You have to check that. In turn, Tegeta owned OCH, Optimum Coal Holdings.
Yes, that's correct.
Optimum Coal Holdings is the holding company of Optimum Coal Mine.
That sounds correct, sir.
Yes. Optimum Coal Mine supplied coal to Eskom.
That's very correct, sir.
Yes. All right. Can we now proceed to deal with Mr. Boysen?
Well, before you go to Mr. Boysen, Mr. Zuma, you have read Mr. Sundaram's affidavit, is that correct?
Yeah, I have taken a look, yes.
You have read it?
Yes.
Yes. Would you agree with me that in that affidavit, if what he is saying is true, then the former president was being briefed in very great details about a number of many matters relating to ANN7. Would you agree or would you not agree with that, if what he is saying is true?
So, just to be clear, you're asking me to give an opinion, a speculative opinion?
Whether, if you read what he is saying, you would take the view that the former president was very involved in matters relating to ANN7.
That's a very tricky question, Chair. I don't have a problem answering, but
Yes.
that's you're asking me for a view, an opinion, a speculation, which I'm not comfortable giving.
Not speculation. It's simply when you look at what Mr. Sundaram says
Yes.
They were doing, the meetings they were having with the former president, the issues that he says they were being discussed. And it may be that the former president, when he gets a chance, he will say, there's nothing like that. There are no such meetings that happened. Or there were some meetings, but I wasn't involved in the kinds of details that this person is talking about. So it may be that that's what I will be told. But I'm simply saying, if what he says is true, it seems to me that the former president's role or involvement in N7 was not superficial. He was quite involved in it. So I'm inviting you to say whether, if all of that was true, you would share the same view, or would you say, no, when I look at what he is saying, I wouldn't say the former president was very involved. I would say, seems his involvement was superficial.
Chair, I see you pushing me to give a view. I'll give a view.
Yes, no, I want a view, yeah.
Yes, but I'd also like to place that if this Mr. Sundaram's version of events was not true,
Yeah.
is there anyone else that can give that same speculative
Yes.
view? But anyways, to answer your question,
Yes.
I'd have to agree with you, most definitely.
Yes. So, but you say, as far as you know, that what he says is not true.
Yeah, no, I'm answering your question. I was just putting my view across just to say
yes, okay.
as an alternate. But to answer your question, since you've pushed me to do so, I'll answer it. And my view is I'd have to agree with you. Yes.
Yes. The reason why I'm simply raising that is that, in part, somewhere in his affidavit, Mr. Sundaram seems to, well, he certainly says that the former president was much more involved with ANN7 issues than you were, despite the fact that you had shareholding in ANN7. You remember that
Yes,
part
yes, I
of
remember
his-
that. I remember that clearly,
yes. Your own involvement in ANN7, I think out of the 4 meetings you did say there's only one that you attended
That's
that
correct.
he talks about.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct, Chief.
On the face of it, without you putting your input in regard to that seems to go along with what he's saying. Here is a situation where the former president and ANN7 people have 4 meetings with him. He's not a shareholder, but here is the shareholder, is 30% shareholder. Out of those 4 meetings, only one that he attends. But of course, there may be other meetings that you were involved in that Mr. Sunjaram doesn't talk about. But I just wanted to mention that and just hear whether you have something to say about your own level of involvement in ANN7
Yes.
issues.
No, I'll respond. Firstly, he mentioned that I was part of a number of meetings, but then he mentions that I didn't contribute to any of the meetings. So you can't have it both ways. He needs to decide whether I was there, I was active, or I was not there. And as I'm saying to the Commission is, I was not part of those meetings. That's the first point I want to make. And Chair, the second point is, besides ANN7, a lot of other companies that as Mr. Mukwena pointed out, I was a shareholder, director, whatever the case was at that time. There's been a prevailing narrative up until this point about state capture, corruption, influence, outside of government, appointing of ministers and whatever else. Now, I'd made the decision to pull back and not to be active in a lot of roles,
Okay.
to my detriment. So I couldn't grow with my company.
Okay.
And not just Mr. Sundaram, I'm sure there'll be a lot of staff that worked in the offices that would have said, like, we haven't seen this gentleman around in a long time. I'd make some visits from time to time and give my input where I
Okay.
could. Now, the point I'm trying to get to is, if it was the other way around, and I'd been in all these meetings, I'd been there directing traffic, and whatever purpose I need to be in that meeting for. Today I'd be sitting here and you'd be asking me the question on, you've been placed at these meetings, there's now editorial interference from shareholders. What would I say about that? So I'd rather be sitting at this point saying, I'm not sure what Mr. Sundaram is talking about, because if it was the other way around, you would be asking me and you'd actually be putting to me that as a shareholder, I was part of these meetings and I was interfering editorially. So, I know, I've spoken in a roundabout way, but I just wanted to make that point.
Yes, no, I think what you have said is important, but let me just make sure I understand it. With special reference to my question, you seem to be saying, I'm not denying that I was not very involved in ANN7, but there was a reason for it. I decided to pull back, but also there were a number of other companies in which I was involved. Is that right?
Yes.
Is my understanding of what you are saying correct?
Yes, you're correct, as well as me having to have limited my roles as well.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I'm talking,
Yes,
about.
you're correct.
Yes,
You're correct.
yes. No, that's important because we want to hear all perspectives, because without all perspectives, things might seem to be looking in a certain direction, but when one has all the perspectives, it's important, because what you are saying is I deliberately tried to limit my role for the reasons that you have given.
That's correct, Chief.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Zuma, I was just about to move now to the evidence of Mr. Poison. He testified before this commission. He informed the chair that he joined the South African Police in 1976. It's folder number 4.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And he told the chair that he was promoted to different ranks, starting from the colonel, brigadier, and major general. He told the chair that you were once a complainant in a criminal matter that involved Mr. Ian Andrews concerning a fraud line betting scheme. Would that be correct?
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
Yes, it's incorrect, sir.
And how did you encounter Mr. Poison?
I met him through a mutual friend of ours.
A mutual friend.
Yes.
And under what circumstances?
It's just an introduction.
Just introduction.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwena, I missed the question to which Mr. Zuma answered. It's not correct. I think the first question.
He says that to the extent that Mr. Poison says that he was once a complainant in a matter involving a fraud betting scam, and he
Yes.
says that it's incorrect,
Oh.
but he admits that he did meet Mr. Poison, I think, under different
Oh,
circumstances.
okay,
Yes,
okay,
and we're
okay.
just about to interrogate
Yes.
those circumstances where you met Mr. Poison. Can you share with us?
So there's the issue that he's speaking about, which is not my issue, and I've denied it. There's a mutual friend of ours that was handling his own matters at that time, which relates to the issue that you just raised, which is not my issue. And that's how this whole thing arose of the meeting.
So this issue that he's telling the chair about, it's not your issue, but it's the issue of a mutual friend.
That's correct.
Oh, so that's how you met in those circumstances.
In those circumstances, it was purely by
I
chance,
understand.
and it was just a social.
And would I be correct that Lieutenant Botha from the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal was the one appointed to investigate that case?
I do not know about
You
that.
don't know about that?
No.
Now, Mr. Poison,
I'm sorry, before that, do you have any recollection whether maybe when the mutual friend laid the complaint or asked for the matter to be investigated, you accompanied him and that maybe that's how General Poison might have thought both of you were complainants in that matter?
No. That's
You did
definitely-
not
No, that
accompany
had
him.
absolutely nothing to do with that
Yes.
specific subject matter.
And you know of no reason why he would think you were a complainant in that matter?
No.
Yeah.
Confusion, but I do not know.
Yes, okay.
but I mean, flowing from what the chair was asking you, he says that he did not meet with you once, but on many times when you would inquire about the progress of the investigation in this matter. Is he also is not telling the truth?
What I'm saying is I'd met him a few times, and numerous times if you want to put it that way, and it was purely on a social basis. There was no discussion of any pending cases of any sort. I was not following up any cases of anybody.
It was just on social basis.
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
He relayed one such meeting that took place in Sandton. Can I refer you to page 3 of his statement? And he states, Mr. Chair, I'm referring to paragraph 158. He says on the 16th of August 2015, a few days before I was interviewed for the post as the head of the Hawks, I was contacted by Captain Derek Swart from Durban SAPS on behalf of Duduzane Zuma, the former president's son, who wanted to meet me, which I agreed to. I knew Duduzane as a result of a fraud investigation in which he was a complainant in a criminal matter. The investigation related to a complaint by Duduzane and one Winston Ince against Ian Andrews concerning a fraud in an online betting scam in brackets, gambling close brackets, At the time, I had appointed Lieutenant Colonel Martis Botha from the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal in KZN to investigate the alleged fraud. I had previously met Duduzane a few times when he had inquired about the progress in the investigation. One of these meetings took place at his office in Sandton when I was in Gauteng for a meeting. I take it that you dispute everything that he says in that paragraph, even though you can what you are saying to the chair, it's simply that you did meet with him a few times, but not as related by him. Your meetings, it was simply on social basis.
Before I answer that, I'll answer that. If I may just ask a question. What does co-complainant mean?
I don't know. Maybe we'll ask Mr. Boyson.
Well,
A co-complainant must be a person that launched a complaint together with you.
Okay, that's true.
yeah, it's somebody who, together with somebody else, lays a complaint.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you
that
say-
document would be available if I'm correct.
Sorry.
That document or that.
They
whatever
ought,
it is.
they ought to have been at the time. I don't know now, but they ought to
Okay,
have been
then
documents.
Then I think we should pull that document up, and that'll answer that question.
Yes.
And then moving on to, I mean, I think it's clear that we've met a few times. We haven't disputed that. I once again deny that I was a co-complainant, and I wish that record could be pulled up. As for the meeting happening in my Sandton offices, I don't recall. It could have happened. It's possible, but I do not recall it.
I think maybe I could say that probably for the commission's purposes, it's neither here nor there whether you were a co-complainant or not. I think what's important is you had met with him
A few times.
on a number of occasions
Yes.
Chair,
prior to this.
May I humbly disagree with you, Chair?
Yes, okay.
I think that is quite a focal point here because
Yes,
the theme of the meetings and the subsequent meetings is based on me being a co-complainant, which I've said I am not.
yes.
So-
But you see the issue in which he says you were a co-complainant might not be the type of issue that the commission is really looking at. It might not be the type of issue that the commission is busy with, in terms of what it has to investigate. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe to take that point further with the chair, if you turn to page 4, you'll see the importance of why you were sent a 3.3 notice. He proceeds at paragraph 159, and I'll read that to paragraph 164 for you to react at once on those paragraphs. He said that I met Duduzane at the Sandton Gauteng station, where I took it he wanted to discuss his matter. Duduzane was driving a black Rolls Royce. Can I pause? Do you have a black Rolls Royce, or did you own one at some point?
Not a black Rolls Royce, but there is a white Rolls Royce.
Or a white?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you say there is. At the time that he's talking about.
Yes, at the time, yes.
Or at the time, there was a white, not a black one. Right?
Yeah, I was doing well, Chair.
Okay, he might have just got the color wrong.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
I just had to ask that question so that
Yes.
I was quite clear that you do have one, or you did own one. Duduzane had suggested that I get into the vehicle with him. I told my son, who was with me at the time, that I would be driving with Duduzane and that he should follow us. My son followed us in his own vehicle. I took it that we were going to his office in Sandton. We chatted about odds and ends. There was no discussion about his fraud matter. Prior to our arrival, Duduzane had made no mention that we were in fact going to the Gupta compound or anything regarding my interview to the position of national head of the Hawks. The next moment, we pulled up at the residence in Sentin, which I recognized as the Gupta Saxon World compound. I alerted from the vehicle, by which time my son had walked up to me and asked me whether we were there, whether we were where he thought we were. I responded and told him that I thought so. Although I was caught by surprise, I decided to see how things would unfold. We were escorted by security guards and entered the house where we handed our cell phones over to them before entering the lounge. Tony Gupta was the only Gupta brother present. There were also house staff present, which I gathered were from India, who served us some light Asian snacks. Tony spoke to my son, who is an IT specialist, and told him if he wanted to go into business venture, he should speak to them. And the next page, the last two paragraphs, there were no significant discussions, but what I indeed considered curious was that Tony knew that I was about to be interviewed a few days later for the post of national head of the Hawks, although I recall that a daily local newspaper in KZN, the Mercury at the time, reported that I had applied for the post as national head of the Hawks. Tony said that if I was appointed, we should have supper together in Durban. I did not know what to make of his statement, but suspected that he wanted to create the impression that should I be appointed, he had a hand in it, and that I would consequently be indebted to him. I would like to reiterate that Tony did not say this directly, and that it is merely speculation on my part. I laughed and said that we could. Duduzane, who was present, did not partake in the conversation other than discussing generalities. After having had refreshment, my son and I left. I did not hear from Guptas again. This was my one and only visit to the premises. And I give you a chance, or should I also say that this is one of the instances where you are also placed in the crime scene. You are not part and parcel of this meeting.
Please, give me a chance, please. Give me a chance, please, to respond.
I guess crimes in inverted commas, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Mkwena.
Yes.
Because certainly in regard to this meeting, there doesn't seem to be a suggestion of any
Impropriety.
impropriety or any criminal activity.
Yes.
Okay. If I may be allowed to respond, thank you. I think to start off with is, like I said, the interactions between myself and General Boysons were on a social basis. That's the engagements we had. We discussed a lot of weird and wonderful things, but it was on a social basis. I've detailed the history of how we got in touch. Now, on this specific day, and what leads to it is he'd always ask questions about the Gupta family, which a lot of people ask. Friends, family, strangers. And he's obviously a career policeman, so he's got a level of inquisitiveness or quite an investigative nature. Just even when we had the discussions on general stuff, random stuff, he'd always inquire from a policing perspective. I mean, that's his history. So in a few discussions prior to this eventful day, he'd raise the question, like, how are the guys? You know, what is their situation? What's the story? Like I said, the usual questions. And I said, look, one day if there's an opportunity, I'll take you to meet them. Just like I've taken a lot of people to meet the guy, just like I've taken Mr. Tony to meet a lot of other people, friends, family, just to get a perspective, because a lot of people don't have that perspective. and interpersonal engagement. So this leads us to this day, and I may be wrong, but if my memory serves me correct, this would have been a weekend, not a weekday. So for there to be a suggestion that we're going to the office, I'm not too sure about that. By the time we'd arranged to meet at the Gautrain, if I recollect, he was coming from either Midrand or Pretoria. The plan was to go to number 5 Saxonwood, and that's exactly what we did. We arrived,
So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
So he too knew that the plan was to go to the Gupta residence.
That was the only plan for that day.
Yes.
That was the plan.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
There was nothing else. Like I said, I maybe
Yes.
I stand to be corrected, but
Yes.
it was definitely a weekend.
Yes.
I mean, we've met a few times, and there's times where I've met him in Pretoria.
Yes.
So there was no issue of the venues. We've met in interesting places. This specific day was.
Yeah, I was for going there.
Yes, this was that we'd agreed. Okay, if you come through,
Yes.
I'll take you through to meet Mr. Tony. He's a partner of mine. I'd like you to meet him.
Yes.
And he said, okay, if that's the case. Whether it was inquisitiveness, whether he thought I was joking, I don't know. But
Yes.
that was the plan for the day.
Yes. I interrupted you while you were continuing.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
You may continue.
Okay, so that covers that point. So moving on. Yeah, he's correct. There was no discussion about any fraud matter. Like there wasn't any previously. If we can just move on to paragraph 163. Definitely general discussions. There were some specific discussions with his son, obviously on him being an IT specialist and opportunities around that nature, what he does, the usual pleasantries. Getting to the point where, because paragraph 163 actually, forgive me, but it doesn't make sense to me. If you read the whole thing, the whole paragraph, it takes you from an accusation of prior knowledge to a Hawks position or prior knowledge to an interview for a Hawks position or shortlist. Then it goes on to say that this popped up in the Mercury at the time, so it could have been public knowledge. Then it winds off to an impression creation of information being known beforehand, and then it ends off with a reiteration, a firm reiteration that the statement was not made directly. It's a very confusing paragraph to me, so I can't respond to that. It's got a whole host of themes that don't make sense to me. But what I can say is that was not discussed, and that was definitely not the issue. That's on paragraph 163. Yes, I think that's what I'll comment at this point.
Now, to sum up what you have testified in regard to this paragraph, I understand it correctly to say that indeed you did meet him at Gautrain, you did take him to the Gupta residence, and he did meet a Gupta brother on the day in question, and the discussions is.
That's correct.
Yes.
When General Boysen was giving evidence here, I think I asked him a question about the purpose of the trip to the Gupta residence, because it didn't seem to me that it was clear what the purpose was. If you look at what he said happened once he was there. But you say that there was a purpose. Is that right?
Yes, and I'll reiterate it if you allow me to.
Yes, do that.
The purpose on that day was very specific.
Yes.
By the time we agreed to meet up at the Sandton Gautrain station, we all knew where we were going to.
Yes.
That was discussed prior
Yes.
to us getting there. And the discussion was preceded by a discussion
Yes.
on inquiring about the nature of the Gupta family and so on and so forth. And I'd say, look, that's my guy. Just as much as I have a good relationship with him, I was starting to build a relationship, I believe at least, with Mr. Boysons. And if the time arises, I'd love for you guys to meet. And he said, no, it's cool. And we'll meet. And that was that specific day. So the purpose for the meeting happening was purely a hello, hi. It was a meet and greet. There was no other specific purpose.
So am I right in understanding you to be saying that in previous discussions or discussion in a previous discussion, he had expressed an interest in meeting the Gupta brothers or a particular Gupta brother?
Socially, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, yes. He
Yes.
had expressed that
Yes,
interest.
fine. After discussion, yes, he definitely did.
Yes. And unlike is it Mr. Howard that we dealt with a while ago, in respect of whom you say you were not close to him.
Mr. Chawla.
Oh, Mr. Chow, okay. Mr. General Boysen, are you able to say, as at that time, you felt that the two of you were close, had a close relationship or not?
Obviously, we don't have a long-standing relationship.
Yes, but-
from the interaction, that
Yeah.
period of time leading up till
Yes.
then, I think we had a very good rapport, definitely.
Yes,
yes.
yes,
And I hope it's still that way.
yes.
So if
yes.
Mr. Boysons is watching, I
Yeah.
hope he's still cool.
Well, I can tell you that when he gave evidence here, he said he found you to be very respectful and so on. And, so that part I can say. So you took him to the Gupta residence because he had expressed an interest in meeting the Gupta family.
So let me make it clear. Due to prior discussions, there were discussions around the Gupta family. So it wasn't him who just decided, let's go meet the guys. After
No, I
discussion, it
accept
was,
that, yeah.
I'd raise it and say, look, if you're asking all these questions, you can ask them directly. You seem to, so,
Oh,
yeah. So afterwards, like, if there's an opportunity to, I'd honor that opportunity. I'll do so. I said, okay, fine. So
Okay.
that day is the day that we met up specifically
yes.
to go and fulfill this exercise. For him to get a sense of who this family is, where they live, I mean, it's been a major talking point. People are inquisitive about it. So I feel, even with his background, he thought, okay, let me go check it out. And that's exactly what he did.
Yes, you see, the reason why I'm putting these questions is that I want to make sure that I don't misrepresent what you are saying.
Yes, Chair.
Before you gave the answer that you have just given now, the impression I was getting was that you were saying that it was at his instance that you took him to the Gupta residence because he had expressed an interest in meeting the Gupta family, or one or more of them. So that's what I was checking.
Yes.
Would it be correct to put it that way?
If I may,
or
let me, if I
not
may
really?
answer it, if I may just answer it in this way.
Yes. He seemed to have a lot of questions.
There were
about
questions, there were discussions,
Yes.
and I said to him, look, these are open people.
Yes. I can
if-
take you there.
Yeah, if you'd like to meet them at any
Yes.
point, let me know. He could have said no.
Okay.
He said yes. So
Okay.
if you're saying at his instance, I'm not too sure about that, but this is the way
Yes. So
it panned out.
So it may or may not be at his instance, but that's the context.
Yes,
in
there was a-
which
yes, there was
it
a build-up
happened,
to it.
yeah.
Yes, correct.
He had questions that he was asking about them to you.
Like many other people. Chair.
Yes, and then from your discussion with him, it was agreed that when there is an opportunity, you could take him there.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you.
But he seemed to say, I mean, from the paragraph that you have read, that when you fetched him at the Gautrain, he was not aware that you're going to take him to the Gupta residence.
No, then that's not true, sir.
Yes. And I mean, that is also, you'd recall that we have also traversed that questioning in light of Mr. Jonas. He also said that he did not know that he was going to be taken to the Gupta residence, and you say that's not true.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, would it make sense that on a random weekend you decide to meet up, to drive all the way from Pretoria to Johannesburg? You meet up at the Sandton train station. And offices are closed on a Saturday, so you reasonably cannot expect me to be taking you to an office. It can happen. I may have the keys in my pocket, but it's a Saturday.
Yes, but you can take me to your house
Yeah, 100%.
and not to the Gupta residence.
But the specific discussion was, we're meeting in Johannesburg. If you want to meet the guys, I can take you through, and there was that agreement.
Is your understanding that he came all the way from KwaZulu-Natal for the purpose of that trip to the Gupta residence, or is the position that he was in Gauteng and there was an opportunity to
Yes.
meet and to go there, and that is what was
Yeah,
done?
I don't want to put other people's business in the streets, but he was in Gauteng at that specific
Yes,
point.
yes.
Some of the meetings that we've had have been in the Gauteng space.
Yes, okay.
More specifically Pretoria.
Yes.
This
okay.
given time, he honored me and he graced me with his presence in Johannesburg, so he made the trip.
Yes.
And I appreciated him for doing that because he didn't have to.
Yes.
And from there, we went through to
yes.
the residence. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chair, the two that are remaining, it's Advocate Ramatlhodi and Mr. Mofe. You must have read the statement. The legal team
I'm sorry, before you do that,
Yes.
Just maybe to complete maybe what I'm saying might be provision, kind of observation, some things that one is noting. On this occasion, there is somebody that you are taking to the Gupta residence. That person, the person that person meets at the Gupta residence is Mr. Rajesh Gupta, Tony Gupta. So that those are the two aspects. The third one is the one that Mr. Mukwena mentioned, that what we have is on the two trips, on the two visits to the Gupta residence, one involving Mr. Jonas, the other one General Poison. Both of them say they were not aware that they were being taken to the Gupta residence. But you have said, actually, each one of them knew quite well that the trip was going there. In the case of Mr. Jonas, that was decided after after you had met at the Hyatt Hotel. In regard to General Poison, you say that there must be a trip to the Gupta residence had been discussed and decided even before you met at the Gau train station.
Yes, that's correct, Chief. I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
it may not be well known, it may be well known, I don't know. It was pointed out in the company organogram that Mr. Tony is a business partner of mine. And
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Mr. Tony Gupta is a business partner of mine.
Yes.
Yes, and he's also a very dear and close friend.
Well, I was about to check that because I seem to have read somewhere that out of the Gupta brothers, he was the one that was quite close to you.
That's correct. The reason I'm pointing that out is because I spent a lot of time with him on a daily basis.
And in regard to him, we can say he was particularly close to you.
More than particularly close to me.
Okay.
That's my guy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's your guy. I'm just about to move to Mr. Ramatlhodi and Mr. Mofe. The legal team of the commission took the view that the two of them mentions your name, but they do not implicate you. And
Who are you talking about now?
Mr. Ramatlhodi and Mr. Mofe.
Okay, all right.
Yes. However, you're given a 3.3 notice.
Yes, sir.
You might have read their statement, both of them. I mean, Mr. Moffat simply confirming what he was told by Mr. Ramatlhodi.
Yes, sir.
Then we can stay with Mr. Ramatlhodi. Do you wish to react to any of the contents of his statement?
No, I've got nothing to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwana, for the sake of the public and those watching, do you want to repeat what they say?
Yes. Let's go to
So that they can
folder
follow the answer.
number. Folder number should be 5, I think. If you go to folder number 5 and you go to page 2, the relevant portions where your name is mentioned appears to be paragraph 2 to 11, and as requested by the chair, let me contextualize them and simply, by reading only those relevant portions. Paragraph 2 says, following my appointment, I received many congratulatory messages, including one from Duduzane Zuma. What was peculiar about Duduzane's message was that he asked me to meet me and convey his message personally. At the time, I responded by saying I was very busy in Cape Town and that during weekends I should still be busy because of my political appointments. Then, after a few months, I got a frantic call from Duduzane, who was demanding to meet me. I arranged to see him at St. George's Hotel, where we were having an initial executive meeting. In that meeting, he said to me he was sorry to meet me under those circumstances where he had lodged a complaint against me instead of meeting me in order to congratulate me. He wanted to tell me that he had received information from 2 sources that reported that I have been going around bad-mouthing him and his business associates, saying that they were involved in criminal activities. I asked him who his sources were. He mentioned 2 names, one from India and the other from South Africa. I do not remember those names because he promised to furnish me with the names in writing. That never happened. He also mentioned that he told his father, the president, about these allegations. My response was that he grew up in front of me, so I was one of his uncles, as we were referred to those days by children in exile. I went on to say that as his uncle, I do not need to run around reporting on him doing crime. I would simply summon him and ask him if he was doing crime, and if he was, I would order him to stop or report him to the police. I went to tell him that I will tell his father about our conversation. His response was to ask me to meet AJ Gupta in order to explain the situation to AJ Gupta. I told him I don't know AJ and I owe him nothing. He left the meeting on that note. Any of these facts emanating from this paragraph which are accurate or which you wish to comment on? Did you call Mr. Ramatlhodi? Did you have that exchange of?
If I may start from point number 2, and that states that following my appointment, I received many congratulatory messages, including one from myself. I do not recall that, but that could be true. I'll take it as that being the case. Sounds like something I could have done. As for paragraph 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I'm not sure what he's talking about.
Yes. And
Well, when you say you're not sure what he's talking about, are you saying you have no recollection of what he says you said to him and he said to you on that occasion? Are you saying you are denying that you said to him what he says you said to him and so on? Or what is the position?
The position, Chair, is that I'm denying the points that I mentioned out.
Yes.
This version of events as placed in this document do not reflect the reality at that time.
But do you admit having met with him on that occasion?
On which occasion?
I think
Okay.
he says first you made calls, but ultimately the two of you met at St. George's Hotel.
No.
You say there was no such meeting.
There was no such meeting. The only times I've met him have been in passing. There's been no formal sit-downs or get-togethers.
And are you sure about that? Because it might have been quite a few years back. It's important for you to reflect in case maybe it's true you have forgotten, or are you quite sure that it never happened,
No,
that meeting never happened?
I'm quite sure. I mean, he's detailing a lot of
Yes.
events that happened in that time frame, and none of that is reflective to that. So, me meeting him at St. George's Hotel to discuss the subject matter that he's placing forward, because that's what these paragraphs are about, is entirely not true.
Yes. Is it possible that the meeting and the discussion did happen, but he might have got the venue wrong when he says St. George's Hotel? Maybe it happened elsewhere.
As I'm saying, any formal sitting with Minister Ramatlhodi has never happened, whether it's St. George's or anywhere else. And as I stated, I have bumped into him in a number of places, but that's been in passing.
Well, I don't know whether you would call this, if the meeting that he's talking about, a formal meeting, but in other words, you say that you have not at any stage in the past ever accused him or complained to him that you had that he was mouthing you or your companies and so on. You have never had any discussion along those lines with him?
No, I haven't had that discussion with him, Chair.
Yes, okay.
so all these details that is putting from these paragraphs, he's simply imagining them. They never happened.
More than that, Chief, it's an environmental issue, because now we've spent a whole page printing a whole bunch of stuff that shouldn't be here.
Yes.
Now, if you turn to the folder number 6,
Yes, sir.
paragraph 4,
I'm
Now-
sorry. The paragraphs that you said you don't know what he's talking about, did they include paragraph 11? I'm sorry.
yes, they do.
They did.
Yes, I read it, Chair.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
If you go to the next folder, that is the statement of Mr. Mofe, and if you turn to page 5, paragraph 4, he's now relating to the chair what happened in relation to you, as stated by Mr. Ramatlhodi. He says that former Minister Ramatlhodi informed me that Mr. Duduzane Zuma called me and wanted to meet him for the purpose of which was to congratulate him on his appointment as Minister, Mineral Resources. I cannot remember the date since it was not essential that I record it. And that's, the essence of Mr. Maofe simply confirming what was told by Mr. Ramatlodi. I'm sure that, is there anything to react to?
No, I cannot react on this point.
Yes. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I just want Mr. Zuma to confirm, if you go to folder number 7, you can...
Before we go to number 7, going back to what Mr. Ramatlodi said, Mr. Zuma,
Folder 5.
going back to folder 5, and I'm looking particularly at paragraph 11. So I'm bearing in mind that you say there was no such discussion. The discussion is talking about never happened between the two of you. I bear that in mind. But if one looks at what he says, if that discussion did take place, it seems that one of the things you wanted to do in paragraph 11 was to get two people, that himself and Mr. Ajay Gupta, to meet, to discuss maybe rumors of mouthing and so on. And I go back to Mr. Jonas. You have Mr. Hlongwana. You get to know that there are rumors that Mr. Jonas was blackmailing Mr. Hlongwana, and then you want to bring them together to resolve that. It seems that Mr. Ramatlodi, if what he's saying is true, is coming up with a situation where you have become aware of rumors of him bad-mouthing your companies, and I guess Mr. Ajay Gupta as well, and you want to get them to meet to discuss the matter. Is that right? You understand that?
I see your
if
point.
His version is correct,
yes.
yeah.
And that,
but you say it's not correct.
That's not correct, and it fits into the narrative, of course,
Yes.
which is
okay.
Which is two. One being myself being an organizer, a conduit to meetings and influence and whatever else it is, and the second point being I'm always there trying to put people together to resolve, issues that are non-issues via rumors in the atmosphere. So I take your point, Chair, and I see where you're coming from. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The folder number 7, just for you to confirm, you see that the first diagram, it's having a face right on the center of it. Can you see that? And there are a number of entities. I've gone through them. I just want you to confirm whether were you the director or having any stake in those, companies. If you want, you can take them one by one and just take us through.
If I may make a request, because obviously
Yes.
I'll need to check. A lot has changed
Yes.
over a period of time, so I don't want to give the wrong information.
Yes.
Looking at some of these companies, yes,
Yes.
I have been involved. Some of them I am not too sure
Yes.
what the situation is. So if I can
Yes. Yes, we
request that whatever question is being raised, I can pointedly go through one by one, and I can submit it to the commission as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be too sure at this point.
That should not be a problem. So in other words, you want to check
Yes.
before you give any answer in regard to each of the companies,
Everything-
because there are too many of them.
Active, not active, share,
Yeah.
register, the whole thing.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that should not be a problem.
Thank you very
If
much.
you can also do the same in relation to Mabangela.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Chair, that concludes the questioning from Mr. Zuma.
Yes, there are two ways in which this can be done. One obvious one is for you to submit an affidavit in which you explain what the position was.
Okay.
I didn't apply my mind to your question, Mr. Mkwena, whether you were talking about now or you are talking about at a particular time. So when he looks, he needs to be able to say, in this one, I have been a shareholder or director from that time up to now. So is there a time frame that?
No, he'll guide us. He'll just look at the company
Yeah.
and where he knows that at some point he was
Yeah.
a director, he'll say it.
And then he can give
He
the
can
time
give us the
frame where
timelines, time
necessary.
frames of it,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That will quite help.
Yeah,
with
that
Yes.
can be done. And do you think you would need more than 7 days to?
No, most definitely not, Chair.
Yeah. So let's say today is Monday, if at all possible, if that affidavit could be delivered to the commission not later than Monday next week.
Will do, Chair.
Yeah, okay, all right. You are done.
I'm done, Chair.
Okay. Before I release you or allow your counsel to say something, I just want to ask one or two questions going back to Mr. Jonas and the meeting in the Gupta residence. Mr. Jonas said that, among other things, he said that the Gupta brother who was in the meeting told him that, told him that they would make him rich or he would be rich or something to that effect, and said that, said something along the lines that you had become a billionaire, or they had made you a billionaire. I'm not checking now the exact wording, and that you. I think he said they said to him, you had been able to buy a house in Dubai at that time. Now, of course, the question that immediately arises would be, in case those things are factually correct, how would Mr. Jonas know them? Or were they the information that was publicly available? So I just want to raise that because it is in my mind as well. I don't know if you are able to say anything.
My only comment at this point is I'm not sure where you would have got that information from, but there has been a great deal of publicity around my financial status. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here today.
Yeah,
That's for the claims that I've been made this wealthy person. And then secondly is property in Dubai.
Yes.
That's also been, I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but unfortunately I have. It's been well publicized.
Yes.
In the media space. So I think those are ideas that have made the rounds over the past few years.
But part of my question would be whether, leaving out what the position is now of what is publicly available, whether at that time that was publicly
Like I said, I'm not sure.
You are not sure?
I'm not sure. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think Council wants to say something.
Yes, Chair, I would have thought that we have a right of re-examination. Just
Yes,
short, I've
you
got
do.
about 7
Yes, you
points.
do.
Sorry. Sorry to do this again to everybody, but am I the only one that needs to use a bathroom in this room?
Okay.
Sorry, can I take a comfort break, please?
No, that's all right. I wanted to say to you earlier on, you asked for a comfort break, but I said, well, I wanted to say the chairperson needs to be au fait with all the terminology, because sometimes it's comfort break, sometimes it's an opportunity to wash hands. So, okay, we are at 22:04. We were going to, we normally stop at 4, but sometimes when it's necessary, we go beyond that. We do serve some witnesses tomorrow, but they are short. So depending on how much time you need. I just want to mention that subject to everybody being agreeable, there is an opportunity of finishing tomorrow morning.
Mr. Chair, we understood, in fact, that we were going to be here for 2 days.
Oh, yes, yes,
but-
yes.
We have a difference on our side of the fence. We understood 2 days, and
well,
colleague
I
Mr.
can
Helens understood 1 day.
Well, I can say that certainly my contemplation was that we should be able to finish with him in 1 day, but that should we not finish, we would continue the following day before other witnesses. But as things stand, Mr. Mkwena has no further questions. If there is room for us to try and finish. There is room for us, subject to what Mr. Helens might have to say, there's room for us to finish tomorrow morning.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
No fingers pointed. We thought it was 1 day.
Okay.
Tomorrow is difficult for me.
Okay.
I have about 5 areas to cover, which I don't believe will take more than 10 to 12 minutes.
Yes.
So if I could go before Mr. Lowe,
Yes.
I'd finish today, and if Mr. Lowe needs to run in tomorrow,
Yes,
he can
yes.
do that, and I don't have to be here
Yes.
because he's dealing with Jonas, and I'm
Yes,
not
yes.
involved with Jonas.
Yes, I don't have a problem with that if he has no problem with that. Yes. Okay, then is that fine with you? Would that be fine with you?
That is excellent.
That
Thank
would
you.
be fine. Okay, so I think we must then take the comfort break and then come back, and then Mr. Helens will then have a chance to re-examine. And then when we finish, then maybe we can adjourn to tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
We are nearly 4:45. Let's just adjourn until 4 o'clock. Is that all right?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, we adjourn.
All rise.
Yes, Mr. Helens, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuma, you will have heard the phrase "on the scene of the crime" a few times. Now, no one's actually suggesting, I think, that a crime was committed, but they're using the phrase in inverted commas to say, and yet at a significant moment you were there, and yet at a significant moment again you were there. And what is sought to be painted, I think, is a pattern which is undeniably something that must be questioned and is ominous. Do you understand that that, in my submission, is the theme of those questions?
I understand, sir.
Now, to test whether you actually were at the places that people say you were and doing or saying what they say you were doing or saying, it would appear to me that this commission it's incumbent on this commission to investigate whether there could possibly be any truth behind that which is being described by the witness. Do you have a comment on that? That's a leading
definitely the
question,
duty
I beg your pardon.
No, that's definitely the Commission's duty, I believe. for
Now let's
both.
take a concrete example. Mr. Tukwana is said that someone at Saxonwold said that you were getting money from a mine in Jagersfontein. And this was a good indication, it is suggested, that there would be something in it for Mr. Tukwana money-wise if he also climbed in to this effort with Mr. Magashule to make money. I can give the appropriate section, but we all know what we're talking about. You remember that evidence?
I do, sir.
Do you have any interest in a mine in Jagersfontein?
No, I do not, sir.
Do you have any knowledge of a mine in Jagersfontein that you could possibly be said to be receiving money from?
No, sir.
Do the Guptas, with whom you are negatively linked, have a mine in Jagersfontein?
No, sir.
Would you invite this commission to investigate what mines there are in Jagersfontein to establish whether it would be remotely possible for you to get money from a mine in Jagersfontein?
As I had mentioned earlier, I hope that they had done so. They clearly haven't, but I'll definitely invite them to do so.
Now, it would seem inexplicable that if you are not getting money from a mine in Jagersfontein, and this was a portentous or ominous allegation made by a witness led before this commission and before the public, that investigation as to the possibility even of you receiving money from a Jagersfontein mine had not in fact been investigated. Would you agree?
I agree, sir.
Now, to conclude on Mr. Tukwana, if it is found that there's not the remotest possibility of you receiving money from that source, then it would appear outlandish that anyone would make such a suggestion, and then it would bear on whether Mr. Tukwana is talking the truth at all as to your presence at a meeting where you say you were not present.
That would be correct, sir.
What is your attitude, finally, about the investigation into the Jagersfontein money? Do you invite it? Do you ask for it?
As I said earlier on, it's a point that I'd raised, and with all due respect to the Commission, I was slightly disappointed that it wasn't looked into, but we're sitting here today, and if there's a possibility of that being revisited, the Chair did make his comments.
Yeah. Mr. Zuma, I've noticed you're very polite. You say, I'm very disappointed. You say, I don't know what he's talking about. And when you're asked more closely, what do you mean by that? You say, I deny it. I take it that's your politeness coming through.
I believe so, yes, sir.
Yeah. Now let's just talk about Mr. Boyson. The chairperson said, well, the issue isn't whether you were a co-complainant leading to your association with Mr. Boyson. The fact is there was an association and you went to the Gupta house. You yourself asked the question, but do these documents still exist? Can it not be established whether I was co-complainant in a matter being investigated by Lieutenant Botha in KZN. Do you invite such an investigation?
I most definitely do, sir.
And if it is found that you are not a co-complainant in the matter, that would suggest that Mr. Boyson is completely mistaken or not honest about how your relationship with him arose.
Yes, that would be correct, sir.
What possible reason would there be for him to be not frank, not honest, or even mistaken about his relationship with you and how it arose?
I do not know.
But if the background was not that you were co-complainant that he came to be talking to, but as a result of a friend of yours being a complainant, he got to know you. And in that context, the conversation came to, well, you talk about the Guptas, why don't you come and see them? What would your comment be then?
If you can just repeat that question, please.
Mr. Boyson pictures your relationship as being, he comes to meet you in a semi-official capacity or official capacity as a co-complainant in a criminal matter, right?
Yes.
Were you a co-complainant in a criminal matter?
No, I was not.
What reason would Mr. Boyson have to be mistaken or even to be not honest about that?
I'm not sure. He may have been confused. I do not know.
Your version is that you became friendly. You met because a friend of yours was a complainant in a criminal matter, right?
Yes, that's it.
And thereafter you became friendly.
I like to believe so, yes.
Mr. Boyson doesn't characterize that relationship you had as a friendship or a fairly close acquaintanceship. He doesn't characterize it as that.
No, he doesn't.
He says you unexpectedly took him to the Gupta home.
That's what he said.
And what is the truth?
That all along, as I detailed before, when I was asked by the evidence leader, that day in question, there was an agreement for us to go through to the said meeting.
I think, Mr. Helens, if I'm not mistaken, to be fair to General Boyson, he does say that the two of them had several meetings. So to the extent that what you have said to the witness might suggest that his version is that there might not have been much interaction between them before that. I'm just saying my understanding of his affidavit is that he does say before that there had been quite some interaction between the two of them.
Mr. Chairman, without asking the witness, let me make a direct submission, if I may.
Yes.
We invite the Commission to investigate whether Mr. Zuma was a co-complainant. If it is shown that he wasn't, it would color the background reason to Mr. Boyson explaining that they met and how they met, and it would give impetus to Mr. Zuma's evidence, namely that we were friendly and he wanted to see the Guptas at my suggestion, as I understand it, and so I took him there, as opposed to it started off as something formal and then out of the blue. The investigation of co-complainant would contextualize and destabilize, we submit, Mr. Boyson's evidence to the extent necessary to make far less ominous the trip to 5 Saxonwood. That's the point. And then in conclusion, Mr. Sundaram, he mentions you, but without a purpose, because you don't appear to have done anything in any of these meetings at all.
Yes, sir.
But you get the mention.
Honorable every time.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're not there, and once when you were there.
Yes, sir.
And then Mr. Ramatlori too, there doesn't seem to be much point in him pulling you in. It's just that you are on the crime scene, as Mr. Mokoena loves to say. Coincidentally, apparently.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Helens. I see, Mr. Helens, that you kept to your 10 to 12 minutes. That's to be commended.
Sorry.
I've been around a long time.
So, excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we spoke on this side, and there's no chance of completing my side of the work today.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
thought of asking you whether we could perhaps commence at 9 o'clock
Yes.
tomorrow morning. Then I should be done by 10 o'clock.
No, that, well, adjourning is fine, but we might not need to start at 9 o'clock. We might be fine with starting at 10 o'clock because the other witnesses that are scheduled for tomorrow will be very short.
I thought
So-
it might just assist in
Yes, no,
getting the
I
job done.
understand. No, I
So
understand.
it'll be 10 o'clock then.
Yeah, so we'll start at 10 o'clock. I'm sorry, Mr. Zuma, you
Sorry
want to say something?
Yes, please. Just a concern from my side, and it's quite a big concern. Just from the evidence pack that has been presented today, and that
Yeah.
I've been questioned on, there's a glaring omission. I'm not sure if there's a mistake
A
or not.
glaring omission.
of a witness that testified in front of the commission, and
Or who has not been mentioned here, who has not been included here?
correct, that would be a Ms. Fakey Mento. So I'm not sure where that
Yes.
line of questioning would be.
I think what may have been intended, maybe we should adjourn. Your counsel hears what you are saying, and I think they have started talking to Mr. Mkwena. They will discuss, and tomorrow morning I will be told what happened to your concern. But it's possible that it was thought that you might be asked to come back at another time. But Mr. Mkwena will deal with the concern, and then tomorrow morning I will be told.
Thank you, Chair.
So we are going to adjourn. Or before we adjourn, okay, maybe we can deal with this tomorrow. We will adjourn, and then tomorrow we'll start at 10 o'clock. We adjourn.